Hello, welcome back to another chapter of The Stars Above. Before we get into that, I'd like to take a moment to thank today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is Uncomfortability. You see, I was getting a little bit too comfortable in my metal beach chair, and this tufa rock with jagged edges lodged straight into my ass is rather uncomfortable. Um, but the thing about comfortability is a gateway drug. You know, I learned about that in Dare. It's arguably one of the worst gateway drugs because comfortability leads to ignorance, and ignorance is bliss. And I'm not entirely sure that I've ever known what bliss is, but I'm just going to keep sporting uncomfortability. And I'm also sitting atop a rather high cliff face, and I am uh, terrifyingly afraid of heights. So double uncomfortable right now. But I'm facing my fears, you know, facing your fears and being uncomfortable are monumental stepping stones in one's development. This also just so happens to be the cliff face of which I met Icarus upon while he was pissing. And while I'm not so sure that you could fall to your death from this height, you would most certainly break a whole lot of bones, and you'd likely die eventually of being stranded in the desert. Uh, Unless you had really great upper body strength and your arms were okay, but you'd probably break your back too. That's besides the point. But I can assure you that when you're on a handful of peyote buttons, this this moderate-sized cliff face might as well be the Empire State Building. You know, so there's that. Uncomfortability, because if you keep comfortable your entire life, I promise you that one day you're going to wake up and say, Jesus Christ, I'm kind of a little bitch. And you don't want to be that guy or girl or they or them, whatever it is, you don't want to be that. So give uncomfortability a try, you know, see what happens. Chapter 8, Dreamt into Reality. After swinging by the taxidermy shop, I'd head into work. It was Thea's birthday, yet she appeared a bit disgruntled. How are you doing, dear? I asked. Not so good, babe, she replied. My van wouldn't start this morning. I had to walk to work and got harassed by a greasy hobo on the way. Jesus, what happened? I walked past him, and that cockeyed wackadoodle tried to cop a feel. Did you put him in his place? Let's just say he came real close to finding out what splitting logs feels like when you're the log. I told him, back off, slick. Wherever you're passing through from, best keep on. What a jackass. Let's get you giddy. I took some puffs of a joint to mellow out, so I'm a tad low, a little high, and a whole lot of rock and roll. Not sure how you do it, babe. It's too damn hot out there to be walking. Feels like Nam. I may have trench foot by the end of the day. You do a tour in Nam, dearest? Never been. Just know guerrilla warfare when I see it. Those sneaky bastards out there are using foxholes for reach-arounds. It's a goddamn feeding frenzy of sexual deviance. That squirrely fuck had me twisted. Smell you later, alligator. Thea was hysterical, talking like a bat out of hell. Shoot, I said. It wouldn't be your special day without some chaos. God willing if the creeks don't rise, she said. I worked with Celine yesterday. We got to talking. You know, she's real keen on you. God damn, do I adore that girl. Shirley has me smitten. She told me what happened to your mom, how difficult it was for you to bring up. I'd never spoken on it before. Hardly feels real. I get it, babe. My parents aren't well off either. With them back in Colorado, there ain't much I can help with. It's easy to feel guilty being here in Reno. Yeah, it feels like I'm letting my brothers down in some way being out here too. For whatever reasons, the path you found yourself on has led here for a purpose, and I have a feeling it's just where you need to be. Did talking about it help? Certainly, but it was hard finding the words, hard to not get lost in my mother's experience while coping with my own. She always struggled. If only I'd understood what she must have been fighting through, Maybe I could have done more, or at least been there. I'm sure those painful insights are ones she'd wish to spare from you. A mother doesn't want her children to know the depth of sacrifice or suffering undergone. She protected you as best she could. It's pretty obvious that the force of love within you inherently mimics that of your mother. While you may wince in the recollection of painful events, do take the strength and spirit which drove her soul into deeper considerations. You speak just as she would, I said, confused to be hearing it. Well, kiddo, Thea smiled, the pain a woman endures is in line with the amount of love her heart can achieve, just as the barriers that prevent most people from understanding a true sacrifice or honest commitment can be shattered to reveal a type of nurturing so deeply rooted in devotion to higher principles, a love which stands the test of time and trials of giving. I don't know what to say. Thank you so much, truly. This was my first real sense in understanding what Thea and Celine meant to one another, for I could feel what she'd start to become for me. Here this mystic lady stood on one end of a spectrum, spitting a perverted sense of guerrilla warfare, and, on the other, had the eyes of an angel and tongue of a sage. It was everything needed to hear and more. As my own brilliant and beautifully psychotic mother would have found a way, Thea was there to express such for her. While Celine and I may have felt to lose what we believed could never be replaced, we'd been left in the hands of the one who patiently awaited our arrival, a mother who could extend that same strength ours possessed and remind us of that same love they passed on to us. So, are you ready for some Thai or what? Thea asked, cackling. You know it, I replied. Bird will swoop me up after work so I can get ready. This was the first time Celine became acquainted with my motel turned trap studio. The look on her face as we pulled into the driveway had sympathized my reluctance to show it off. Cozy and charming, Celine said, chuckling. What was the down payment? A ball of speed? Listen, I said, just because this complex is listed as the last seen location for several missing children on the back of milk cartons doesn't give you the right to doesn't give you the green light to patronize me. Wouldn't know. Don't drink milk, she said, raising her nose to the air. But you're right. This place is a total shithole. It suits you wonderfully. We were running late, so, in skipping the grand tour, she'd explore all 100 square feet of it alone. Don't get lost, I yelled from the shower, or fall through the cellar hatch. After drying off, I opened the door to find Celine standing before my dresser, with a smile stretched wide. Gently, she graced each finger over the porcelain figurines, stuffed animals, rustic treasures, and my beloved trinkets, before pausing at the photo of my mother dressed as a clown. She's beautiful, Irk, she said, holding her gaze. You have your mother's nose. If you're referring to that squishy red foam ball, I said, then yes, and proud of it. And what's in here? She asked, placing her hand over an old wooden chest. All I have left of her, I said, in the same way she had whilst holding that shoebox. Celine smiled, knowing what it meant. I hadn't wished to interrupt the moment. Those precious keepsakes carry the very essence of my being. To watch her connect so intimately and resonate with me through them felt nothing short of extraordinary. She'd then gestured a monkey resting over my broken record player. So, this is your roommate? She asked, cocking a brow. Roommate, son, freeloading degenerate, banana mooching addict, I replied. Is this true, monkey? She'd ask him directly. I don't think he appreciates being slapped with such demeaning labels. Don't listen to anything he says. That deranged chimp practices psychosomatic therapy without a license. He's a goddamn con artist. You should be more sensitive to his feelings. You're no daisy yourself, pipsqueak. Celine's interaction with Monkey was without hesitation. She hadn't questioned him, what he represented, nor assumed I had any specific reasons for speaking to him, having given him the same acknowledgement that she'd given me, connecting and conversing with an inanimate object just as real as myself. She hadn't seen porcelain, but a part of me gone unrecognized, misunderstood, and ignored in others. In seeing Monkey, Celine saw me, for me. We're late, Irk, she said, breaking the silence. Let's blow this popsicle stand. By the time we got to the restaurant, Thea and her boyfriend were already seated with their drinks. So sorry we're late, I said. Bird took forever to fix her bangs. Excuse me, she said, jabbing me in the ribs. It was Icarus who spent an hour in the shower singing the Pinky and the Brain theme song 49 times straight. I shot my hand up into the air, yelling, One is a genius, the other's insane. Thea looked to her boyfriend with palms up. See, they're as whimsical as daffodils, she said. Celine, Icarus, this is Robbie. Hello, we'd blurt simultaneously before choking back laughter. Rob was a tall and lanky, good-looking cat dressed in all white, loose-fitting linens which I could only assume were hand-sewn from hemp, high in the Himalayas by a Nepalese monk. I'd no doubt he owned a full set of chakra-tuned crystal singing bowls and fancied himself a disc golf aficionado. But only the latter was correct. There was an adoring warmth to his presence, having held a gaze which could float you into a soothing trance, and a kindness to his tongue that spoke of kindred spirits, as if a long-lost brother on the front lines of humility. "Tell us about yourself, Roberto," I said. "Anyone who stands alongside a witchy woman such as this must be a pretty interesting fella." He inhaled deeply and exhaled slowly. Yes, a powerful woman she is," he said, taking each breath and word into account as if a mantra. "I'm a delivery driver, but my passion is making music. That's how Thea and I met. I found her online, through mutual community groups, and was enamored with her from afar, a true artist. I wrote her a song and took a chance on love. We stayed pen pals for a while before she took the jump to move here last year." "Distant love. Poetic," I said, winking at Thea. "Must have been quite the song." Thea wore a hesitant look. There was more to her being in Reno, something unspoken. "I never expected myself out here," she said, "but Robbie sure won me over." "What inspires your music?" I asked. What doesn't?" he replied. "Life and love, endearing moments shared, dancing beneath the stars, synth pop. I really try and tap into spirit, channeling our ancestors." "I tried channeling the ancestors once, asked what it might take to find my inspiration." "And what did they tell you?" "To be honest, the call wasn't very clear. Something about idle hands jerk off the devil. Must have been a wrong number." The sharp pain of a Doc Marten boot crashed against my shin. "Gah!" I bellowed. "What in God's good name was that for?" "Don't be so obnoxious," Celine whispered with a mischievous grin. "Obnoxious? Me? Never," I said, kicking her shin just as hard. "Check your vibe, missy." "I'll vibe check your head off, scrawny little worm," she said, declaring war beneath the table until having smashed my toe against the steel leg of her chair. I raised my white flag napkin in agony, shame, and defeat. Rob appeared startled, not having expected to share this special evening with two children causing a scene. "What brought you to Reno, Icarus?" Rob asked. "I hate Los Angeles," I replied with exhausted apathy. "Ah, yes, the Great Void," Thea chimed in to sway my vagueness. "I've spent some time out there in America's strip mall. Comply, conform, consume." "Isn't it beautiful, dear?" I asked, laughing. "Truly, clean and quaint. Nothing better than watching societal lab rats narrow in on an already tunneling reality. Oh, what senselessly sensible attributes for slaves to superficiality." Thea spoke slow, then strangely quick, like an offbeat wizard amidst an opium bender. I'd know, having freebased plenty through straws off scolding sheets of tinfoil, slithering about my garage like a demented monk toppling over Victorian sofas. "I really enjoyed my time spent in LA, Rob said. "What a culture." "Well, yeah," I replied. "You can see the forest for the trees, but I think you're mistaking culture for a twisted illusion of misled grandeur. A spade's a spade, just as a city of insatiable desire is an eyesore to the soul." Yes, insightful. Rob was a man of simple taste and nature, pure and innocent, sweet and tender, a gentle giant with a softer soul, unaware of the atrocities the world around him so graciously offers, nor the sense of loss which accompanies it. The kind of fellow to depict interpretations of corruption, fear, and suffering as simple mirages to our mind's eye. Ignorance is bliss. I'm not knocking him, but it can be difficult to converse with those who are inexperienced in the fragility of our being. It's what made Thea and Rob's dynamic so intriguing. How could he have understood her? They spoke two entirely different languages. One was dark, full of pain-induced wisdom, and subjected to the beauty of an endless sorrow. The other was light, cuddly, and wrote songs about sunshine on cloudy days. Peculiar, perhaps such polar opposites attributes complemented their duality. It was difficult to put a finger on it at the time, considering I was still getting my shins kicked in by a pestering little garden gnome. It was a remarkable evening which further strengthened our bonds. While it was wonderful getting to know Rob, the three of us stole the show. A grand performance of debauchery amongst an audience enjoying Reno's finest taste of Thailand. As Celine and Rob made their way out the door, Thea pulled me to the side. "Did you see that?" she asked. "See what, dear?" I replied. "When you got up from the table, Celine looked right at me. Eyes lit up like the 4th of July. She pointed at you and mouthed, 'Oh my God,' before whispering, 'Who is this guy?' No shit. Do suppose I'm rather fetching." "I think it's a bit more than that, babes. I haven't seen a look like that come across a girl's face in many moons. There's something real special brewing here." We spent another hour in the parking lot, not wishing the night to end. Our sparks ignited and the fire was quick to grow, roaring with hunger, and it'd be up to us to feed it. The following day, Thea invited me to her and Rob's place after work, an adorable apartment in Midtown. Paintings and memorabilia covered the walls, while instruments such as guitars, djembe drums, native flutes, tambourines, and rattles lay in each corner. Thea threw on some tunes, and we shot the shit over a cigarette. Y'all got it made, I said. Makes me feel much worse about my own digs. It's a pretty stellar setup we've got, she said. Our best friend Andrew lives across the way there, that window facing ours. You'll meet him soon enough. Oh yeah? What's he like? He's a bartender up in Verdi, likes to drink red wine, write poetry, and blast Joni Mitchell while burning the midnight oil. Love him already. I too fancy red wine whilst pretending to be a poet. Thea smiled, pausing in contemplation. You sure are an odd one, she said. You know, it's funny. When we met, I couldn't help but feel how precisely familiar you already were to me. I felt the same way, dearest, I replied. But it wasn't just that. You felt like an echo of love once dormant. It made my dang hair stand on end. Thea spoke in a calm and calculated manner, much like she had when speaking to my mother, again, leaving me without words, although unnecessary in expressing our connection. I saw you I saw you walk through the door that first day, she said with a sly grin, like a knight whose steed's dark mane was ablaze. The way you met my eyes, how I saw you look at her, our little bird. No path had been crossed by accident. It was something more, something beyond comprehension. I didn't question who you were, Icarus Mikhail, for I'd already known. Thea spoke with an ember tongue, words of fire. I knew our meeting was more than one of chance, just as I'd been destined for that small town. A map in the stars had brought me there, and now I was beginning to understand what kept me. I want to tell you about a familiar figure in my life, she said, one I met as a child. I'm all ears, dear, I replied. As a little girl, I experienced far too much suffering for my own good, which became worse as I grew. By 15, the trauma arose so intense that I'd manifest severe symptoms of PTSD during sleep. I often felt to be losing my mind, being unable to differentiate real from not. To get away from those terrors, I began studying dreams, for I wasn't sure if I was remembering certain things, or filling in gaps between my conscious state and non. I understood, having dealt with severe psychosis in my mid-20s, triggered by PTSD and drug abuse. Episodes much like my mother's, which often led me to sit outside emergency rooms questioning whether it was time to submit. I'd rock back and forth in my truck, stuck in horrific thought loops. Just wake up, Icarus. Wake up. It's not real. It's not real. Nothing ever looked or felt right to me. Sounds emitted a confusing whir, as if being unable to interpret correct frequencies anymore. People, imagery, and color were often distorted, never in focus. Perceptible motion blended into passing blurs, as if time moved forwards and backwards simultaneously, and the ground below felt of constant quakes. All once considered correct became incorrect, having had no clue towards what was real and unreal. It felt like being on an endlessly looping merry-go-round which spun too fast to step down from. I'd often find myself within a perpetual dream state, unable to grasp waking life, having altered layers of realism to the point of being stuck somewhere between the abstract. As a child, I believed to have had control over these areas in my psyche, leaving the body to enter the confines of mind. I had the gesture's guidance, but as an adult with their prolonged absence, I'd forgotten how to navigate those passageways. Control was lost, having traveled too far down the rabbit hole to safely resurface. I knew the terrors she spoke of, for they'd all been mine. Thea continued. I started to delve very heavily into the idea of lucid dreams. At the time, I was an occultist lady studying a book by Aleister Crowley, who used dreaming as a technique to contact otherworldly beings. I had no interest in that, only wanting to know why I'd been so terrified to sleep. I began the process of trying to wake myself within the dreams, for if able, perhaps I could take command of the situation and change the outcome, not necessarily to rewrite the past, but rescript the way it was coped with. The similarities between us furthered, my obsession with altering the present by revisiting the past to right its wrongs, being no different from Thea's. How can we slow time when it moves exponentially quicker than we're able to grasp? A soul has no calendar or clock, nor does it understand the notion of linear time or distance. We don't visit the past to alter the future, but to understand it. If able to delve inward, seeking the far reaches of our past and the immeasurable pain undergone, could we change it? If by concentrating our emotion towards that which was once buried, finding the root of its internal conflict, perhaps we could unearth it. We could hold that distant memory in the palm of our hand, realizing it's a part of us we were once unprepared to confront. From the depths of our being, we could focus our feelings as they channel within that memory, giving recognition to the fact that its torment still carried is mere illusion, that the strength we possess now has prepared us to face it, a seed of sorrow that we can bend, transmute, and replant, watching carefully as it grows from being a fear once previously misunderstood to a shade of love we longed to embrace. By doing this, we could alter the fabrics of an unconscious past, repair its damage, and reshape our conscious present. While our physical body may be unable to achieve this, our mind most certainly can. Thea continued, one technique to wake myself within the dreams were the use of coins. Having been fascinated with them as a child, I'd hold them while awake to try and program my thoughts to be related to the concept of consciousness on command. In doing this, I started to slip briefly into lucid dreams, becoming aware of a presence or being who infiltrated that space. I didn't know who he was at the time, but he was present enough to become familiar with. Again, the parallels hadn't ceased. When I began experiencing episodes of psychosis, I saw ways to reassure my sense of awareness, having used tokens as reminders for being grounded in the physical. Bells, old keys, and coins, the click of my mother's spade Zippo, or the twirling of my rings, the certainty of their existence and unique sounds made helped to solidify reality, tethering me to the present whenever consciousness drifted between hellish limbos. Thea continued, one night I dreamt of a bizarre desert so real I could taste the grains of sand. I was in a building with a clear frame and no ceiling when I noticed him, perched like a bird on one of the walls. I asked him to come down and speak with me, making my way through many rooms to get to him. Once we were finally face to face, he was so shy, and although he'd shapeshift over time, he always remained this gorgeous boy. He told me, my name is Mikhail, and I've been watching you for some time now. I've always been obsessed with studying the old world, and Mikhail began taking me on these strange ethereal tours through ancient, sacred places such as temples and pyramids. He'd explain through these experiences that where we'd travel were places I'd already been familiar with. One night I'd expressed to him, "This is like the Akashic Records," and he replied, "That's exactly what this is, the collection of all universal events, thoughts, and emotion, your past, present, and future." Then he began to play with coins, and I awoke. I didn't see Mikhail often in the first few years of our introduction, but enough to have his presence established. I felt so deeply that I must have been dealing with a real person out there in the world who I hadn't known. He'd always been a mischievous trickster, and any time I said to believe he was real, he'd run away and hide until needing him again. I was starting to feel better while having more control. Where sleep was once torturous, it became something I looked forward to exploring, hoping to find him. Mikhail was very reminiscent of the gestures, an entity who helped guide Thea, just as I'm sure Celine's creatures had for her. All the more peculiar it became, as if the three of our timelines had been weaving in and out of each other's without knowledge, until pulled tight to entangle, connecting there in Reno. It was a ring of truth within the possibilities of magic, those only believed real in fairy tale. Thea continued. A couple years passed, then one night Mikhail came to me in an open, endlessly white space and handed me a seed. He said, when you plant this, I want you to imagine the most peaceful place. Instinctively, I hurled the seed into the whiteness, expecting some super miraculous thing to happen, but nothing did. Several months passed before Mikhail showed up again. Check this out, he said, holding me a single blade of grass. Do you know where this came from? This is your seed, a representation of all you've walked upon and overcome. Over the course of many years, that seed became not only a single blade, but a field of grass, then one with flowers, bugs, sunlight, trees, and it continued to grow. I visited my garden often, whenever waking in my dreams. Eventually, there was a bench, and we'd chat about strange concepts, like how a person thinks their way into reality. Mikhail was so helpful, and I'd been able to open up to him about other vital things in my past, which had occurred prior to our meeting. He wasn't only a guardian to my dream state, but one for my waking life. Thea kept speaking. What she wished to express was of utmost importance, yet I hadn't been able to make out the words any longer. Her voice began to fade like distant echoes of my reality to come. Suddenly I became weightless, nestled, cradling back and forth in the womb of my mother, awaiting rebirth. I couldn't begin to know how, but I'd gained the insight on what that experience must have felt like. In Thea's presence, where I'd arrived, the warmth blanketing me and the soft whirring hymn, surely I'd known that place. In some way, somehow, I'd been there many times before. It was so gentle, kind, nurturing, and forgiving. For so long, I'd yearned for a proper welcoming to a space I could finally let my guard down, much like with Celine, relinquishing my fears of the world. Once again, I began to wander, Thea's call carrying me deep within her heart, far into another distant memory, perhaps one we both somehow, in some way, shared. Well, the magic's really ramping up in this story, huh? Oh, my ass! Just to let you know, I was dealing with an insane amount of sunscreen dripping into my eyeballs, but I didn't stop, and I forced myself to keep reading intentionally because the sponsor of this video is Uncomfortability, and I was just fucking dealing with it. So next time something like that happens for you, just fucking deal with it, you know? My leg fell asleep. Thanks again so much for joining me. We'll catch you next time for another chapter of The Stars Above.